Hello and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. This podcast explores how authors create a world that we can escape into. Join me as we demystify the magic that keeps us turning the page. Hello and welcome to Elena Meets the Author. I am your host, Elena Bose. Today, I'm speaking with Annie Hartnett about her national, terrific, best-selling novel, The Road to Tender Hearts, a dark comedy that will have you laughing at the bleakest moments and wondering, ooh, should I be laughing at that? Is that bad? This is a zany road trip story whose cast includes a lot of broken characters, starting with PJ Halliday, a 63-year-old exasperating, dysfunctional, but lovable man given to flatulence with whom women still find attractive, his recently orphaned great niece and nephew, and a psychic cat named Pancakes who can predict death, and PJ's daughter Sophie who barely speaks to her father. There's a murder-suicide and PJ's battle with the bottle ever since his oldest daughter Kate drowned in a very shallow cranberry bog several years earlier. Sound grim? Well, I laughed harder at this book than I have at any other since The Wedding People. The author's genius is that this sad story is hilarious, poignant, and uplifting. PJ is a Big Lebowski character, and the book has elements of Little Miss Sunshine. And Annie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Really, this book is so original and funny. I was looking for, preparing my questions this morning, and then I just ended up reading it again.
Oh,
because I get lost in it. It's so good. So to start off, can you tell us about the inspiration for the book? I think you touch on it in your acknowledgments.
Yes. So in 2020, we were living in an apartment in Providence, and we had a baby in 2019, summer of 2019. And so as the pandemic was starting, we were we really would like to not live in an apartment. We'd really like to live in a house. So we ended up renting a house on the other side of town. Providence is the east side, the west side. We moved to the west side and moved ourselves with a U-Haul, a baby, and a dog, just two of us, which just feels impossible. But we did it, got there, and I was so happy to be in a house where I could just be alone and, be with the baby and have some space during the pandemic. But the day we moved in, we saw some cops outside, and I asked, what happened? And the cop said, oh, your neighbor stabbed her sister. And that was the first thing that happened. And then after that, we had made a deal with the landlord because it was the pandemic and because he was in California that we were going to take care of the lawn for a price reduction in the rent. And so the lawn started growing back in, and it was all poison ivy. So we had to call the poison ivy people, because it was on us. And then from there, it just kind of spiraled downwards. So we had 2 basement floods, 2 gas leaks, mold on the walls, lead in the water.
Disaster.
Rats got into our car, caused $1,400 in damage. And Geico wouldn't cover it because they said, well, the rats is pre-damage. It's not the car didn't explode. So they chewed through all the wires. It was damaged. So that happened. Then we had to call the rat guy to come to put boxes in the yard, which I felt terrible about, but I didn't know what else to do. So the rat guy came and he said, okay, well, the reason the rats are coming to your yard is because of this white mulberry tree in your yard. They just love that white mulberry tree. So we cut that tree down, where we called the tree guy. Oh, the other thing that the rat guy said was, I see you have a small child who's learning to walk. Make sure she doesn't run at any of the rats because they will charge at her right back. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's, 18 months old. And so that happened. And then we called the tree guy to cut the white mulberry tree down. And he came and he was like, okay, but that tree and that tree and that tree are going to fall on your house. And we were like, okay, this is maybe we should move, and started those conversations about breaking the lease.
Yeah.
And then a teenager crashed his car at the base of our driveway and died. And his
Sorry.
family, I know. I mean, like, we shouldn't laugh, but it was just one thing after the other. And then his family would come out every night and hold a candlelit vigil in the base of our driveway because there's no sidewalk. So they would
Oh.
stand in the driveway and then they would leave the candles in the driveway. But it was like people would drive over them. So it was just broken glass in our driveway every morning. And it was just like, the hits kept coming. We decided to try to move somewhere else. There was nothing to rent at that time in Providence. My husband works at Brown, so we had to be within a certain radius of Brown. So I just looked at Zillow, like, how far can I go away from here? So I grew up in Massachusetts. I had never heard of this town, but found a town called Lakeville with this really beautiful house that this man was renting. And we went to look at it. We could afford it. Or actually, we couldn't afford it, but I said to my husband, if we go, we'll figure out how to afford it. So we left and went and moved into the house. And I was like, I'm safe here. Then I was like, wait, no, I am not. I can still think of 100. Now I'm educated. Now I know that there's danger all around us and that we can try to see where it's going to come from and like sleep with the baseball bat all night. Be prepared. And then I was like, that's not really a healthy way to parent or a healthy way to go through life. So I thought, well, what I will do, will make us money to afford the house and also will be the place I can put these feelings, is I will write another book and I'm going to put every bad thing that I can imagine happening to a family in the book. And I'm going to make it as funny as possible. So, because that's the way that I deal with uncomfortable situations or emotions really of any kind. I just make the joke. I feel better. And so that was my inspiration and like sort of emotional backstory behind the book. And then one more story about the house is that I got a call or an Instagram DM from the new tenant of the house. And then she said, I just have a weird question for you. Did you ever have any paranormal experiences in this house? And I was like, oh my gosh. So it was a good experience for book writing.
Very, very. On that note, can you read a page or two from the beginning?
So I'll read a little bit of chapter 1. We start in the middle here. And so this is where you meet Pancakes, who's one of the members of the road trip. It was Mary Beth on the housekeeping staff who had noticed the pattern. Mary Beth was in charge of stripping the beds, cleaning and dusting and sanitizing. And after a resident died, she noticed there was always orange cat hair everywhere, much more than in any other room. She pointed it out to Dr. Gust. She said she had heard there was another cat like that, a therapy cat over at a Rhode Island hospital. It wasn't a completely unknown phenomenon. Curious, Dr. Gus had said, and he agreed to look into it. In the morning, the cat was found on the chest of another patient who had died overnight. Soon, Dr. Gus was obsessed with the cat's movements. First, Pancake spent all his time in Mrs. Monty's room, dead in 3 days, then on to Mr. Broomfield's room down the hall, dead in a week. Upstairs to Mrs. Anderson's corner room. Mrs. Anderson lived another 2 weeks. One time, Pancakes snuggled with a patient for 3 months, but the woman was still the next one in the home to die. And so on, Pancakes made his choices. And the cat was never wrong. Dr. Gus was so excited, he called the reporter for the South Coast Daily Sun. The headline read, "Nursing home cat predicts death, provides comfort at end." Dr. Gus planned to frame it for his office. But after the article ran, there was no more comfort in the Pondville nursing home. Before, no one except Dr. Gus and a few members of the staff had known about Pancake's knack for prediction. After the article, the residents were in hysterics. Here was a 4-legged and pod-grim reaper walking in their midst, stalking the halls and picking them off one by one. One of the patients died jumping out the window just because the cat had sauntered in. Get rid of the cat, the nursing home patients demanded. Get rid of the cat, the nurses said at the next meeting. But Dr. Gus didn't believe in getting rid of animals. He knew shelter animals were treated like they were disposable. He wished they could euthanize some of the patients in the Pondville nursing home instead. He didn't want to get rid of the cat. But now Pancakes was in his office, and Dr. Gus didn't want to die either. He was 57, and he was newly divorced, and he was having some luck on the dating apps. He'd just gone on a date with a woman he'd really clicked with. She was newly divorced too. They'd had a great dinner at Applebee's and a nice time at Dr. Guest's place after. Her name was Linda. She was into bondage.
Thank you. So that's our introduction to Pancakes. And then we meet PJ Hartnett.
Halliday.
Yeah.
My last name is Hartnett.
Yeah.
But he is named after my dad, PJ Hartnett.
Okay, so his life basically stopped when his daughter died. He kind of lost hope. The worst thing that ever happened to him happened. And yet, in your story, he gets a glimmer of hope back. Can you tell us about this character, and did he come to you early in the writing process?
Yeah, so I'm very pleased that you called him PJ Hartnett, because he is based on my dad, PJ Hartnett, who no one actually calls PJ. People call him Paul or some version of that, but his name is Paul J. Hartnett Jr., and then my grandfather was also Paul J. Hartnett Sr. Okay. And there's actually also some elements of my grandfather in PJ. My grandfather was a lover of tall tales, sometimes white lies, sometimes like he was a mechanic, and sometimes lies about like cars. But my favorite lie that my grandfather would tell or ever told was, I wasn't there for it, but my dad and my brothers went with him on a trip to Ireland, and they were driving around Ireland, and they were in these pubs, and my grandfather liked to tell everyone that he was Terry Bradshaw's quarterback coach, which is such a funny thing to tell people, and especially in Ireland where no one knows who Terry Bradshaw is. And I am a lover of doing those things, like telling those lies that actually have no consequence too. Like, right. I used to have I don't do it so much anymore, although I think I would if the circumstances were right. I just used to tell these like really long, elaborate lies when I would sit next to someone on an airplane, like just make up an entire life. So the quality is a family quality. So there's a lot of family sort of infused, like the humor is infused from my family. And then my dad is part of PJ Halliday. So my dad is an extremely generous man. He will give money away to anybody. And he also inspired one part of the plot of the book, that because he will call me in the middle of the day sometimes, and he will say, I played the Massachusetts Powerball. I'm going to win $700 million, and I want to talk about how I'm going to divide it up. Because, like, is it fair for your uncle to get $5 million and you kids to get $10 million? And how much should I give to charity? And he just really wants to talk through it. And I'm like, Dad, this is not a real problem. You're not going to win. And then, so he's heard me talk about this on book tour for quite some time now. He comes to almost every event that he can come to.
Sweet.
He's been to like 20 events. I've done a lot of events, and every New England. Sometimes I don't even know he's going to be there, and I'm like, we're in New Hampshire somewhere, and I'm like, Dad, hi. It's great though. He's a very comedic prop because I can just put him in the middle of the room and make fun of him the whole time. So then he will double down after he hears me talk about this. And he's like, Annie, it's a real problem. It could tear our family apart. And I'm like, then stop playing the lottery. So anyway, PJ Halliday is a lottery winner. He is a very generous man with a hole in his pocket too. And he did not win. I mean, he won $1.5 million, which is a nice amount of money, but he's given away a lot of it. So I wanted to play with like the luckiest unlucky man in Pondville, which is where the book is set. It's based in Pondville, Massachusetts, which is very thinly disguised Lakeville, Massachusetts, where I moved to. So PJ is based on a little bit of my dad.
Yeah.
And he's also based on my really original inspiration for the plot of the book.
Yeah.
Was I met a man years ago who told me that his wife every morning cuts up the newspaper and removes things that would upset him about children and animals. And I thought it was like truly the most interesting thing I had ever heard about a person, and like said so much about their marriage. So that was the first person that PJ was based on, but I didn't know that man very well. And so the rest of the characters a lot my dad. And as you picked up on, he's also the dude from The Big Lebowski.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll do with a character often. I will take a bunch of people and smash them together.
I love that. Yeah. I don't know if The Big Lebowski was as sensitive as PJ. He probably.
Yeah. I mean, my dad is definitely like a big teddy bear. Like he's a crier. We always have a competition at Christmas, like who can make him cry first and who can make him cry.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. How did you come up with the idea of having the murder suicide, the orphan children?
Yeah. So there were the 3 sections of the book. So the part I just read with the Pancakes chapter is about the cat who can predict death. So I started the book by writing that, but I thought it was too goofy to get away with. That I kind of so Pancakes is based on Oscar, who is was a real cat. He died in 2022, which is when I started writing the book, and he was a cat at the hospice in Rhode Island who predicted death. He would go around to the rooms, and if he was in your room, they figured out that you were going to die within a couple of hours.
Jeez.
So they used him to like call the families and say, come, grandma's on her way out. So he was beloved in the hospice as a real tool to help, not to help people like be revived, but to help people be managed and to have people say goodbye to their loved ones. So he predicted over 100 deaths.
Wow.
So I wrote that section, but I wasn't confident that I could get away with a cat book. And so then I wrote the PJ section, the newspaper section, and that was like another book. And then I wrote the murder suicide section, which I wrote because I wanted to write. I love to write. If people have read my writing, they know this about me, is that I love to write what my agent calls set pieces, where one dominoes causes another dominoes, and like a bunch of things happen. And if one of those things didn't happen, it wouldn't, like just like dominoes, it wouldn't all come together. So I love to play with misunderstandings, with coincidences. So I wanted to write a poisoning that was kind of like everything could have been different if it were just a little different. And I wanted this book to be that real dark comedy that I have always written, but I like wanted to amp it up. I wanted to make it funnier, and I don't know if I wanted to make it darker necessarily, but probably I did. And one thing that I love, I just love Fargo. Fargo's probably my favorite movie. So I wanted it to be like really kind of gritty. And so I wrote that section. Didn't know that was another book. And then I realized, I just had a light bulb moment one day that was like, oh, they're all connected through the newspaper. The cat is in the newspaper. That's how he gets kicked out of the nursing home. PJ is reading the newspaper cut up every morning. Who is cut up out of the newspaper? The children. And so I realized that through omniscience and through the sort of vehicle of the cat, they could all be connected.
Yeah.
And it would be a road trip, but it would take a while for the team to assemble. So I do, there is like, the road trip doesn't start for a long time in this book, but like, hopefully the pleasure is getting to know the characters and like being like, what is this? Like, I like to have the reader a little bit being like, I can't stop reading. I like this, but like, what am I reading? Both things, which is hard. It's hard to pull off because oftentimes people are like, what am I reading? I'm going to stop. But hopefully like the voiciness prevents people from doing that.
And even though the mother who does a bit of the poisoning, she's a really funny character. She might not be in the book for very long. And the father, like you just keep turning the page because you're like, that actual story is funny. And then they all get connected. And when you realized they could all be connected, did you think, okay, road trip? There should be a road trip with this?
So when I was just writing PJ was always reading the newspaper. And so what happens, like the premise of the book for people who haven't read it, is PJ Halliday is reading the newspaper and he comes across the obituary for his high school buddy. And he realizes that if that man is dead, then that woman is single again.
The wife.
And so he decides and he's at his wife's house, and she's abandoning him to go to Alaska with her new boyfriend. So he's just like kind of looking for a way for himself to have a second chance at love in that moment, because he's very devoted actually to his ex-wife and to her new boyfriend. They have a dynamic. So anyway, so he reads that obituary and he decides that he's going to go cross country to Arizona to win this woman back that he hasn't seen in 45 years. So I had written that already and had wanted to write a road trip book for a long time because I've gone on a lot of road trips. So it was a road trip book when I put them all together. The chapters as they are pretty much as, I worked to make them knit together, but I didn't change them that much to make them all one book. I just had to work on like the strings of sewing them together. So then I had to be like, well, if you got the sudden custody of 2 children, would anyone decide to go on a road trip with them? And because that's not what most people would do, but PJ Halliday would, because he would find a way to do whatever he wants to do, no matter the expense of what it's going to cost these children and he, his rationale is like, well, the kids are about to have summer vacation. We're going to start at summer vacation a little early, and the kids would need a trip to get their mind off things. And he also, as you mentioned, like 15 years ago, his daughter died. So he doesn't want to be in town for the anniversary of her death, especially if his ex-wife is not in town.
Right.
So there's like a couple of motivating factors behind why to make it believable.
It all worked. And then you did the whole story in this omniscient voice, which also works really well and adds to the humor, because you can always say what people are thinking when they're not saying it. Mm-hmm. And we find out about people dying because no one knows the cat has this ability. So was that easy to say, okay, I'm going to do this omniscient voice? Because it just seems like it's the perfect voice for your book.
Yeah, it's the only way that this book would work. I had done basically an omniscient voice for my last book, Unlikely Animals.
Yeah.
Although that is kind of tricky because that book is an omniscient voice, but it's told from the perspective of the ghosts who are looking at the town. So it's like an our town sort of chorus. So there's a Greek chorus mixed with omniscient voice, but that was good practice for an omniscient voice. So I feel like this time I had no problem with the voice. It was easy for me to figure out the balance of just rotating heads. Like there are some chapters where we're in the heads of all the characters or where we get brief thoughts of someone else. Yeah, I did not find that to be difficult this time.
It works.
I now just find omniscience to be so pleasurable in the thing I'm writing now. I'm like, this keeps coming out all from one person. Like, how boring. What about the other thoughts of people? So I want to be writing on omniscience, but because you can also go in the heads of animals, which is just the most fun thing in the whole world.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. You also go into the heads of the cat, because the cat speaks back, and actually PJ can hear the cat, even though he can read what the cat's thinking. And then you've got the talking hat. You've got Abraham Lincoln, his wax arm says something, and you've got the vultures. So do you often do do you just throw that in there? Let's have some animals and inanimate objects. Let's see what they're thinking too.
I think a lot of that stuff is in sort of it goes throughout the book.
But it's scattered. It's little. I don't want people to think that it's like this weird voices everywhere. It's not like that.
Yeah. It's just a little touch here and there. It's probably heaviest in the first chapter when you meet, it's heaviest in all the early PJ chapters where he has a hat that talks to him. He mentions the mermaid in Clear Pond, even though we don't know if that's just a town sort of fun urban legend or.
Yeah.
I do that stuff because it delights me. And then what I do with things that delight me is that I have to make them work in the plot. Like I have to make them because I want them to stay because they're fun for me.
Yeah.
To have like the vultures instead of like seeing the children who have just gone on through so much, and the vultures are wishing that the children are safe and they stay alive.
Yeah.
Like that is it's just pleasurable writing for me. So, but my editor will sometimes edit me for being a little twee.
Right.
And so she will cut out things that she doesn't think works for the plot. Like, for example, I had a scene where PJ's he goes to a bar and he gets carried home by the mosquitoes in this one part.
Oh,
and like, I love that. And one of my friends was like devastated that we edited it out, but so it's a balance. So I have to, if I want to keep something, I have to have it emotionally mean something. And so that's what I've done with all the little like magical moments where they mean something. And the thing is like there's a line, any house will talk to you if you live there long enough. And part of that is just to show how lonely PJ is. Like if you live there long enough alone, like,
right,
the house will start talking to you. And so I wanted to show PJ's loneliness in ways that aren't just like, he's lonely.
Yeah.
He's a hoarder. And so his stuff has extra meaning to him, but that's because his family's not in the house with him anymore.
Yeah.
So he needs to be surrounded by things in order to fill where his family used to be. So every magical thing has an emotional meaning behind it. Otherwise, it would probably get edited out. But I also just like fight to keep it where I can because it's fun for me. So
yeah, it was enjoyable to read. So one of the things similar that I loved, and I was wondering if this was also a delight for you to read, to write, was the randomness of the road stops. So they go to Niagara Falls, where, it's vast and incredible, and that's sort of their first stop, and that kind of jolts them a little bit awake to the beauty of nature. Then they go on to this alpaca farm where there's like a kind of a dark surprise there, and a purse museum. And then you have a town in the story called Somewhere, and the receptionist in this motel is called Destiny. And that's a hotel where locals go to kill themselves. And you say in it that Destiny always asks to be paid up front. And maybe that's why she turns the volume up when she's, during the night. And I was just thinking, when you're writing this, are you just laughing? Or are you like creating, do these places exist? I mean, like Somewhere, does that exist? Or did you just kind of like, this is a good little town name and let's do an alpaca farm?
Somewhere does not exist as far as I know. Although I usually would look up, like, does it exist? So
right.
It does not exist. But sometimes I'm looking for the joke.
Yeah.
It's like, we're nowhere. No, actually, we're somewhere. Like, why would we stop here? And then, I mean, it is a little magical. So playing with the names, making her Destiny. And at that point, you're kind of like, are they ever going to get there? Is this like, we're waiting kind of for something bad to happen. So, and to have it, the darkness is all like, you're very aware at that point that death is all around them.
Death is everywhere in this book, but it's not depressing.
But at that point, like, the reader's in on it. So you're no longer surprising them with things, but you're like, but they're kind of guessing like who is next? Like, what is, like, who is anybody in the car gonna die? Who like, just kind of the guessing game of who is gonna be next, and how's it gonna happen?
Right.
Some of the places do exist. The Purse Museum does exist. So I did the Six Bridges Book Festival in Arkansas, and I went out with another author, Jenna Rose Nethercott, and the person who was moderating our panel, and we went to the Purse Museum just as a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's stuck in my memory as a cool thing. It's very good. If you're ever in Little Rock, it's like a tiny museum, but it's very cool because the purses are organized by decades, so you can really see like the style of the decade.
Yeah.
So great museum, and they did have a gift shop, so that was like sets up what happens there. So sometimes like it's real life that I'll be inspired by.
Right.
With the alpaca farm, I have driven across country many times. I used to live in Alabama, so I would drive between Alabama and Massachusetts all the time because I had a big dog, so I never wanted to fly.
Right.
So I used to do that drive. And then once when I was in college, I was going through a bad breakup. And so I joined my friend was going on a road trip with their friends. And we also camped across the country. So we were 21. It didn't matter where we slept,
Yeah.
So we could stop anywhere. We could go for as long as we wanted. If there was something interesting, there was no place we didn't have to get to some hotel by check-in time or whatever. So we ended up just stopping in a lot of random places. And I just saw so many random things. And I love that about driving cross country is like there's just so much weirdness across the country. So I wanted a stop like that, which was like, what is this? Like, you stop at like Billy Bob's Clock Factory and you're like, where are we? So the alpaca farm was my like a way of showing something like that.
That was good.
Where like, this is so random. And then also with Niagara Falls, my friend who I drove across country with, their great grandparent was Bobby Leach, who was the second person to go over the falls and die. And we did go to Niagara Falls. And so I wanted Bobby Leach to be in there because it was like a fun tribute to my friend. And also because the story of Bobby Leach is exactly the themes of the book. So Bobby Leach was the first person to go over the falls in a barrel and die was Annie Edson Taylor, who first sent a cat over the falls, which was like also on brand. Yeah. And then she went over, she survived. She thought that she was going to get fame for the rest of her life. And what actually happened is she didn't believe she was a retired school teacher. She lied about her age because she thought no one would believe that a woman in her 60s would go over the barrel, but she was really 40. She told everyone she was in her 40s. So then when she went to try to make appearances, because that's what people would do is go on the speaking circuit and you could make money that way. Everyone was like, you're not Annie Edson Taylor. She was in her 40s. You're an old lady.
Oh, God.
And so it backfired. So she so that happened to her. And then Bobby Leach was the second person to go over the barrel in the falls in a barrel and survive. And then 3 months later, he slipped on an orange peel and died of gangrene. So in terms of my themes about death is all around us.
Right. Yeah.
It might not come the way you expect. It might come in a really stupid way. You might escape it in an unbelievable way. But then the orange peel comes for you. It comes for all of us. No one is invincible, even if you can survive Niagara Falls.
Do you keep a notebook of all these things that have just, you're like, God, that's interesting. That's interesting. Because you've put them all together in this book beautifully, but they are not, they're random. They're
Yeah, I don't.
You just have them in your head.
I just have them in my head and I pull them out through writing. I don't really plan at all. But then when I'm writing, they come out. They just stay in my brain.
The other thing is there's a lot of storytelling in your book. You've got PJ's telling stories all the time. His daughter Sophie has to tell stories too. And his late mother was always telling him stories when he was a little kid. Can you talk about the power of storytelling and why that's in there so much?
Yeah, I mean, some of that is so much of the book ends up being about taking care of children and how learning how to do it. And so for me, I was learning how to take care of a child, and every night it was tell me a story. And I'm also I love telling stories, and I'm from a family that retells stories. So there's it's family history. My grandfather and my dad grew up And we grew up with having lollipop trees where you just wake up one day and there's lollipop trees in the yard. So there's one story about that. I definitely was inspired by Big Fish, where I wanted there to be a lot of stories that add up to something more, like stories that Big Fish is not so much stories within stories, but I wanted the crazy stories within stories. I also just like I wanted like bar stories to be in there, both because of like family stuff, like I just told you about my grandfather, and I also wanted there to be like that storytelling is also can be a powerful way out of the hard things that happen to us. So there's just a scene where a guy at the bar gives PJ advice about how you need to put a story on your own life in order for it to make sense, so that you can stop letting like the demons haunt you. And also Ivy, even though PJ's ex-wife, even though she seems like well adjusted and like she's moved on from the death of her daughter, she also doesn't like to talk about her anymore. And PJ's like, what he needs is to talk about her in order to be okay again. And so like some people need to be constantly telling stories about their life in order to move forward. And someone did tell me that, so there's a thing in there, but someone did tell me that the reason that World War II veterans are like always taken out to different places in the community on Veterans Day to tell war stories is not the preservation of history, but it's really like for their own sake that they get to tell their stories to keep their sort of minds healthy. Otherwise they might like be back in their traumatic memories at the end of their life. I thought that was a really powerful
I love that
idea. So is a mix of things, like things I wanted to do plot wise, things I wanted to explore the past of who the woman he was driving to meet was. So and I needed to find the balance of like what's too much like side story and what is actually adding to the plot.
Yeah, because your stories are all true stories, or PJ might bend them a little bit, but they're to do with the plot. Yeah, they're not just total make-believe stories that you might.
Yeah. No, they're not like the cow and the.
No. And I liked also when PJ was trying to think about going to AA, where he's like, well, actually, all I really will be doing there is just telling my stories. So maybe it won't be so bad.
And that's really powerful. Like, I do think that that's powerful for people. It's just, I mean, that's what talk therapy is, right? Except in group therapy, it's even more powerful because it's like the pleasure of telling a group of people a story.
Yeah.
Can really work for some people who are storytellers.
Yeah. Yeah. I also love the artwork on this. I mean, I loved your cover, but then you have a map inside.
Yeah. So I did the map for Unlikely Animals because my editor asked me, she was like, it's a small town, like it should have a map. And so I drew that map, and then this book didn't have a map. And then the sales team at Random House was like, last time she drew a map for us, like, why is there no map? People love a map. It's easier to sell a book with a map. So I was like, I will happily draw the map. I will always like draw something, but I was intimidated because I was cautious because I didn't want to do spoilers. Like, I don't like spoilers. Like, we've given a lot of spoilers here, but that's fine.
The book is so good. The book is so good. Those spoilers won't.
In some ways, like, spoilers don't matter.
They really don't.
Other than there's a couple things we're not going to tell you. But the map, I wanted you to be able to look at it, and because it's also like it's the idea of where they might go. And there's some things like, the fact that there's a boob mug on it, like, doesn't tell you anything other than that. So yeah, it's a non-spoiler map, in my opinion.
I think I love it. It's very wacky, and it's it's good, and it gives you an idea that their road trip is going to be.
Yeah, the original is right over here.
Oh, let's see it. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, PJ Halliday's road trip. It's great. Yeah. So what would you like readers to take away from the book?
I mean, I love what we were just talking about, storytelling. Like, if that is one takeaway, that's like telling stories is powerful, and it can actually be a really healing for people to tell their stories, whatever those are, like whatever you're healing from. It doesn't have to be like alcoholism, as we were talking about, but and so that's one thing. I like love to know that people laughed. And so yeah, takeaways, I think the power of storytelling is as good a takeaway as I could think of. And I live to make people laugh. So it makes me happy if people laugh.
You had a line from the cat, joy and pleasure. No, joy and hardship.
Suffering and joy.
Yes.
Suffering and joy. So yeah, that's like sort of my life philosophy. And so that's probably my favorite line in the book is so the little girl asks the cat when she's alone with the cat, and the little girl, it's not really like the little girl can't really hear the cat. PJ can sometimes hear the cat, but the little girl can't hear the cat. So she just asks the cat, what's going to happen to me and my brother? And the cat says, suffering and joy. And to tell a child that right after like a huge traumatic event is, I mean, the girl can't hear anyway, but that is true. Like, no matter what bad thing happens in your life, there is suffering in everybody's life, and there's also joy. And so I think that's sort of my perspective on life, is that there's going to be suffering, but there'll also be joy. And as long as you pay attention to both those things. And I don't think you should just like try to be joyful all the time. But I don't think it's right to also just try to suffer all the time. That's no way to go through life.
Okay. So I know that you have your, you try to support new writers. Mm-hmm. And so if you were going to give tips to wannabe writers and wannabe novelists, what would they be? What would be your sort of top 5?
So my friend Tessa Fontaine and I run the accountability workshops. So what we do is just hold writers to their commitments for themselves. And we have a huge community of people who can help you do that. So my tips are basically that everyone needs some sort of support. So you can pay me to be in the accountability workshop. I would love to have you. Or you need a writing buddy. And your writing buddy doesn't even necessarily, it is easiest if they're also a writer, but it's just someone you can check in with and tell your progress to. I think sometimes, it is kind of tricky if they're not a person who writes, because sometimes people who are not writers like ask you too much before you're really ready to talk about it, or like, I just feel like writers usually understand, writers or people who are trying to do it understand. So if you have a buddy, it just makes a big difference in terms of like keeping the negative voices away.
And it's such a lonely.
Yeah, and it's lonely. And I think really the only thing that keeps negative voices away is just writing. Like if you're like, I am not qualified to write this, or I will never get published, the only thing that stops those voices from talking is just writing it.
So do you sometimes have days where like really bad writing days? And you just force yourself to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I also do, I have to get back to doing this because it really helps me, but I'll do a sticker chart where I'll keep track of whether I wrote that day or not, and then giving myself that visual credit really helps. So I recommend the sticker chart.
Okay.
It seems goofy, but it really helps.
The visual.
Yeah,
like
the visual.
Sort of like a star chart.
Yeah, it really helps. I think a lot of us are motivated by.
So are you working on anything now? And you're giving yourself star charts now?
I am working on something, but it has been sporadic. I've been traveling so much for this book, which I'm very grateful to do. But I am really, at this point, like need to really buckle down and just work on the writing too. So
okay.
Yeah. So I'm ready to really get into a new project. I'm very bad at working on a new project while I'm waiting for a book to come out. This book also, we sold it on a partial. So it was only done 6 months before it came out. So I wasn't really ready to start something new. Usually you will have like a year of like dead time when you're not working on the book. It's done and you're waiting for it to come out.
Right.
So I think smart authors really capitalize on that year. But since it was only 6 months, I was really starting the publicity sort of right away.
Yeah.
So it didn't, it was good in some ways, but it didn't, and I do have a project that I'm working on, but I really need to like put the blinders on and get to work at this point.
Okay. Well, I'll let you do that soon. Last question is, what books have you read this year, new books that you've loved? Any that you can recommend?
I recommend this book everywhere. It just won the Kirkus Prize, so people are listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
The Slip by Lucas Schaefer is a wild book. It's so good.
Coming from you. It must be wild.
I mean, it's not, I would think it's not the same style as mine, but I can see that we have some of the same influences, and there are certain things that I really admire that he it's mostly an omniscient. He writes across races, across genders. He does some really like tricky stuff that most writers can't pull off, but I think he does pull it off.
Okay. Great.
So yeah, I think that book is worth a read. My business partner's book, Tessa Fontaine, her book, The Red Grove, is a wonderful, creepy book about it's called The Red Grove, and it's just came out in paperback. So it's about a cult or like a community in California where it is believed that men cannot commit violence in this community. So it kind of asks these interesting philosophical questions of like, how would you live if you believe that men could not commit violence against you? And then there's also like a thriller element in the book. Okay. So that's a great book that should get more attention.
Okay. The Red Grove. The Red Grove?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Red Grove, yeah.
Thank you very much. Those are all my questions.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I highly recommend this book. I really, really loved it. And I don't recommend books unless I love them.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. I love so much about this book, including the way that Annie is able to pull together so many weird pieces of information that she's come across. From the real-life clairvoyant cat named Oscar, to the couple where the wife cut out the bad news from the paper for her husband, to the man who successfully jumped into Niagara Falls in a barrel and lived, only 3 weeks later to slip on a banana peel, have his leg amputated, and die of gangrene. Just basically death is everywhere in this book, but so is life. It's just like Pancakes, the cat, said to the little girl, sorrow and joy. And the key is to pay attention. So that's it for today. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.